Welcome to the Unlocked podcast, hosted by me, Julia Myron.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unlocked podcast. And today, our guest is Monica Guzman. She's a bridge builder, journalist, and author who lives for great conversations sparked by curious questions. So that's one thing we have in common. Her best-selling book, I Never Thought of It That Way, How to Have Fearlessly Curious Conversations in Dangerously Divided Times, has been featured in the New York Times, the Glenn Beck podcast, and was named one of the 10 best books to read before college by U.S. News. Monica is founder and CEO of Reclaim Curiosity, where she works to build a world that sees itself. And she's an advisor for Braver Angels, the nation's largest cross-partisan grassroots organization working to depolarize America. And I'm very excited to have her on this podcast. And I just know that we're going to have such an amazing conversation. Welcome, Monica Guzman. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. It's good to be here with you.
Yes. And I've met you, we've had a lovely, I feel like I know you more than you know me, which is good. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to start with a question about your upbringing. So in your book, in your experience website, you talk about how your parents are conservative and you are more liberal leaning and you're liberal. And they're not just conservatives, but they're conservatives that voted for Trump at least twice that you know.
3 times.
And 3 times. Yeah, so we know that right now in the US and honestly around the world, it's incredibly divisive. Mm-hmm. And I just want to know, how are you doing right now and your family doing right now? How are you still navigating those differences?
It's one step at a time. It's been challenging for a number of years. We became citizens in the year 2000. We're Mexican immigrants. And pretty immediately, my mom and dad went right. And it surprised me because I was a teenager at the time and I wasn't thinking too broadly, but I expected them to feel like I did in a lot of ways. And it turned out they didn't. And for a while, it was a bit fancy free. It was arguments over at restaurants over dinner that were loud in Spanish and people turning and looking at us wondering what we were talking about. But around 2016, that campaign, things got really intense, like they did for a lot of families around the country. How we're handling it now? Honestly, we've had a lot of practice. So it's gotten to the point where if the conditions are right, and for me, that often means ideally we're in person. Mm-hmm. Ideally, we have time. You know, maybe it's after dinner and the plates are clear, we have nowhere to go. And one of us is curious and wondering, or maybe a little aggravated about how the other side thinks of something. We'll bring it up and we'll talk about it. So that's happening. That's still happening. We save it for the moments where we know something can come. Some understanding could possibly be born, you know, from the heat and the friction between our perspectives. But we will talk about it. And sometimes it feels like we have to, you know, like I have my little bullet list in my head of what do my parents think of that? Next time I talk to them, I got to see if I can ask.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. And I know when I talk to a lot of people, and honestly, particularly in this last election, I have experienced where I think to myself, how can I be friends with this person who thinks like this? Mm-hmm. How can I be friends? Or yes, I understand that we can all sit across from the table with each other, but how can I have that meaningful relationship with somebody who thinks differently than I do? And this is a core belief that I have. So how do you manage those relationships with someone who has a different political view where you're able to still, for example, with my situation with my friend, we were close, but I feel like in this past election, we kind of, there was some friction and we have not been able to come to the table as close as we were before. So what do you have to say about, maybe from your personal experience, still maintaining that we can still be friends, we can still have a personal relationship, but we respect each other's beliefs?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of levels to come at that. With me and my parents, there's a pretty deep pre-existing relationship of family that, had lots of roots before the political difference came up. It's easier to work on restoring, repairing, renewing relationships that were already deep and then got frayed by politics, maybe than it is to imagine suddenly building friendship with somebody who is so different from us.
Mm-hmm.
But, in the case that you're bringing up, where there is a friendship and then the politics comes up and then the questions come up and then the doubt comes up, I think it starts not in the realm of conversation between you, but your conversation with yourself. I think this is kind of internal work first. Just asking, all right, what is this core value that I feel is being threatened in this relationship? And then getting really humble, like looking at it deeply, going, okay, what in my story has led that to be so strong that it's feeling like it could be a deal breaker here? Can I look deeply and humbly at it? And then there's a really difficult question that comes from that humility, which is, what am I missing? What am I assuming? What questions am I not asking, but believing the answers to? Potentially, because I live in a divided world with lots of misperceptions and projections flying around everywhere, and I too am not immune. I can't tell you how many times I've run into stories, folks with those sorts of relationships, where there was an assumption that the other person thought in this particular way really deeply because of something they said, because of a signal that was received. And at that point, there was fear. Oh my gosh, what? They think that, then they probably think that they probably think that and that and that and that, which makes them maybe a bad person, which makes me not want to be with them anymore, or makes them violate a value I have. A lot of times we sort of believe the entire narrative, but we don't get close enough to investigate if it's true. So that's one thing. The other thing is this. It's like, we believe what we believe often because we think it's the best belief. We think it's the way the world ought to go round. And if we have a connection with somebody who believes something that appears opposed to us, and let's say it really is highly opposed, then there's a social question here. We live in a really divided world. People have been burning bridges for years. If you have a true link with somebody who feels and thinks something very differently from you, what if you're the only person in their life who has access to this different way of framing things? And if that's the case, what if only through you could that person be introduced to this different frame? This frame that you believe is better, right? Well, that gets interesting, because if you break that bridge, that's another person who doesn't have access to what might be the better idea, right? We don't know. And we should always be really humble, because it might be you who has the bad idea and the other person who has the better idea. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in that divided world, there's also that altruistic motive. That why do we believe what we believe? Well, often because we want it to be the belief that sets policy and all of that. How can we possibly hope to get that world to be real if we break our connections with the people who need persuading? So that can take a lot of, then you bring up a host of other issues. It's like, look, if there's abuse, if there's hurt, if there's bad intent, poison, contempt in the relationship, we're talking about something very different. Don't be walking into that willy-nilly, right? But if there's a relationship and then there's a concern, there's a doubt, there's a fear that something really essential is at odds, sometimes the bravest thing to do is to create the condition where you can be really real with each other and ask those questions. And a lot of times people realize that the values they thought were so opposed may not be when you get close enough to see what's going on. But it's tricky.
You talk about like core values, which I love. How do we identify our core values and whether they align with somebody else's, because that's also a very tricky part. Because sometimes, like you said, it may be that we do have the same values, particularly religious, or it's just we're just having different worldviews on how we approach that. So how would you identify, is the problem different values, or how would you identify, okay, this is actually a deal breaker for me in this relationship? Because we did hear, I don't know if you heard of reports of people getting divorced when they found out that their spouse voted for Trump in this last election. That was a
Definitely.
huge thing. So what is your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's a great set of questions. And please, like, course correct if I'm going somewhere different from where you would like to kind of
Yeah,
dig.
that's
Yeah, but
yes.
a really great way to investigate your own values is to pay special attention pay special attention to the things that make you react. You know, you're looking at the news, you're going through the headlines, your social feeds, and something political comes up, and you just it instantly gets to your gut, you know? That's before you even get a chance to think. It gets to your gut.
Mhm.
There's a physical sensation. A lot of us don't slow down to even notice those and apply our consciousness into them,
Mhm.
but that's the first place to look. If you're reacting, why? What is being threatened? What is being violated? What thought arose that got scary, right? And so really it's this: what we worry about points us to what we care about.
Mhm.
So that's the beacon, right? Follow that. Now, when it comes to the contrast between my values and somebody else's values, it's not true, according to my research on values, that we all have different values. That's not quite true. That's a trick of language, for convenience communication, but it's not, I think, terribly accurate. It doesn't serve us very well. Because I think something closer to the truth is that we all share our values. We just rank them in a different order for different situations.
Mhm.
That's what matters. So, in other words, somebody who I don't know, is suspicious of the COVID vaccine doesn't hate the idea of, common good. Um, Somebody who is, suspicious, somebody who wants, like, the Second Amendment to be really well respected, doesn't hate children because there's school shootings, where children are put at risk. You can just name tons of examples. Somebody who wants what are often called reproductive rights, wants the right to an abortion, doesn't hate life, doesn't hate, like, the sacredness of life. That's not what's going on. It's just that
Mhm.
in these different situations, different people will rank something higher than something else. Like in this situation, I just care more about freedom than I do about common good. In this situation, I care more about kind of the common good than I do freedom. I'm willing to give up some freedom. So that's where we're all different. And I think of that as sort of a civic immune system. It's good that we're different. I love diversity. you know,
Mhm.
Everybody loves diversity. And so all of us have different lives that have led us to these different reactions. And these issues that divide us politically are not simple. When people
Mhm.
say they're simple, they're only thinking about themselves. They're simple to you, maybe, if you feel really strongly about it. But what if you were different? What if you were raised differently? What if you were exposed to different things? What if certain traumatic things happened to you and different values were sort of sparked and triggered and made to be more important? It's good, I think, that we have so many differences on sort of degree, right? What should come
Mhm.
first? And then it's about putting values, like balancing values that are put into tension, um, balancing them as best we can in policy. And that's where we
Mhm.
have our battles because that's really hard to do.
Yeah, it's difficult to make policy that everybody's okay, like everybody's happy with. Because just like you said, I may be ranking everybody should have freedom. I'm thinking about it in my conversations with my friends and my family. Because I'm an international human rights lawyer, I do have a very like not altruistic, but also legal view of it. I think of not just myself and what is going to be good for me. I think we're very much like, okay, let's consider other people's religious, social, economic group as well. And I think that sometimes it doesn't really translate because it's very difficult to make everybody happy. So when I talk to someone from a different religious background, they may have something entirely different way of seeing things. And when I talk to another person from a Christian background, they may have a different way of seeing things.
Yeah.
Most of the time I found if you really get to the deep root of the issue, people really do see it the same way. But like you said, they're just reframing
Yes.
certain parts in different ways, which is interesting. But when sitting across those kinds of people, people who are different from us, what should we have in our hearts and in our mind? What should be our mindset when we approach conversations with them?
Right. And the word should is powerful there. And I just want to put a little asterisk on it. Like, what should we have in our minds and hearts? Because I think we just have to have grace for wherever we happen to be. That's okay. But it would be great if the thing that we could muster in those interactions is curiosity. There's this ethic in the way that we communicate on social media and in our media of certainty. There's this ethic of, look, here's some statistics. We already know how people think who are, in this identity group or in this ideological camp. And here's what they do, and here's why. It's like, no, it's bullcrap. Like, I don't care what statistics somebody hands somebody else. They don't know me until they talk to me, right? And so it's just a technocratic society. We do things at scale. Somebody hands us a chart. It's a nice shortcut. And then we start to think that's it. So I really think it starts with this like primeval curiosity. Like if you really want to go radical and spin it all the way around from this person's really different. I'm scared. I feel under threat. This is unsafe. I don't know what's going on, right? To what a privilege I have to be in this space with somebody so different from me. How in the world did they get to that belief that is so different from mine? It feels so strong. My root in that belief feels so strong that I can't believe somebody is rooted in something else. And so we can take that statement, I can't believe somebody is rooted in something else. We can respond to it in a couple of ways. We can respond with aversion. I'm good because I'm me and I love me. So they must be bad. And it must be bad for me to get closer. Or I don't know them. There's an infinite abundance of paths to walk through this life. Who are they? How did they get to be that way? And what sort of posture do I need to take to find out? And the posture you need to take to find out is one of non-judgmental reception, which is really hard for people.
Yeah.
But that's where curiosity does its best work, because people feel heard, and then they share, they open up. And this is what I want for myself, right? This is what I want for myself. So I have to be able to give it back. If somebody approaches me and learns that I think something the polar opposite of them, I would want to be heard. I would want them to take an interest. I would want them to spend time with me instead of believe their projections of who I am and why I believe what I believe, because Lord knows there are lots of those out there. You can go ask the internet about my position, and the internet will give you lots of confident answers, and they won't know crap. So that's the thing. That's the radical position, is curiosity against all odds.
Yes. And I love that you said non-judgmental, because from my experience, and I've done this as well, I don't want to feel like I'm on a high horse. I never do. I've also come with my judgment. And it's from like, I see things, or I know a lot of people as well see things very like moral. This is a moral thing to do. And if you don't think like this, it's immoral. And then you speak about like the internet, then you then go into performance morality, where that's not what they think in practice.
Right.
But because they need to be seen as they are along with the morality of their religion or whatever, so they refuse to critically think and get on board. Right. What do you think about that performance morality or morality when having these conversations?
It comes from a beautiful place. And we all do it it's easy to kind of point fingers, right? It seems like I do that all the time. Like everybody else is so incurious, and I'm this master of curiosity. Not true. Like sit in on one disagreement that I have with somebody politically, and you'll see I have a hard time following my own rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But performative peace comes from the need to belong. We have this ambient thing where everyone's so afraid to say what they really think or ask what they really wonder about. Because what if I use the wrong word? What if I say it the wrong way? What will people think? So it's just become really important for a lot of people that they approach other people and they see signals that these people agree with them, that they're okay. They're okay, right? And so that has led to a lot of non-thinking. It's led to a lot of performance. It's led to a lot of, I think of it as billboarding, like social media has made it sort of very easy to write up on your profile, just say what you believe, say that you'll unfollow whoever doesn't agree with this, billboard. Who am I? Here's 10 things. 10 ways of phrasing who I am and what I believe so that the right people are attracted to me and the wrong people are pushed away. We're all living in this world of symbols, right? Because so much of the volume of our conversation on these issues is overwhelmingly online. And in places where I'm not with you in person, I don't see that you're smiling,
Yeah,
I don't see that you look
true.
like a nice person, a human being just like me. I just see this avatar with this cartoon character and a bunch of swear words and exclamation points, and I get my own ideas. So we perform in order to group ourselves, to know where we belong, to know who we're for and who we're against, because that establishes order in a time of deep uncertainty. We have to inject certainty, the illusion of certainty, into times of deep anxiety. We have to do it. It soothes us. But we have to see past it, or it's going to keep drowning us in these misperceptions and lies of each other.
That's amazing. Social media, my sister, when I was having a conversation with my little sister about social media, she said, I want you to understand that social media is very new. So we have now learned how to regulate ourselves and regulate conversation on the digital space. It's not, I don't think it's been up to 20 years yet. It's Instagram, all these things. It's just very new. For me, like even on this podcast, I would get sometimes the nastiest comments. I had to learn. They don't know me. Like if you have a conversation with you and I, and even though I seldom bring up politics in my conversations because I'm not walking around like pro this or pro. I just don't like. I want to talk to you about the newest album out, the newest music out. What are you doing? So it's so easy for you to see this person. And then it's attack, because that's everything. Okay, everybody attack each other. And that is just so counterproductive. That is what is going to ruin our society.
Yep.
It's going to break us apart. Because you're not thinking to yourself, that is a human being. My perception is not reality. I feel like that has been my chance for the past year. My perception of this person, unless I have an opportunity to really sit across the table from them and say, what do you really think, girl? How do you really feel? Because I know sometimes on social media, you can really get, there can be like a misconception of people. You need to be like, how do you really feel about that? Or let me understand you. Or in your text, if you came across like you're attacking me, or how do you really feel? And you come to realize, like, just calm down. You understand?
Exactly.
Just calm down. Like everybody's just trying to figure it out. There's no need to attack anybody. And I'm sure you've had your own share of that as well. But I also think of it as people identify, especially identity politics, and they just identify with this like thing, and they make their whole personality and their be all end all. In your research, from your experience, how have you found identity politics plays a role in this, and how can people? Do you think people should stop doing that?
Yeah, I think it would be so great if we all found a way to feel secure enough without needing membership in different kind of identity tribes. If we could feel free enough to consider everything in our world anew all the time and bring it into our minds and into our experiences fresh, I think that would be amazing. But I also think that's unrealistic to its core because we are social creatures, and because belonging really matters, and we all build a sense of security and worth in different ways. But a lot of us build it through the sense of meaning that we find in telling ourselves stories about who we are, right? To take like a simple example, like I'm a writer, right? I am a writer. That means something. There's stories out there about what writers are and aren't. And because I am a writer, I have to have a relationship with the stories. The more connected I feel with the grand story of what a writer is, the more of the meaning of that I can borrow and add to the richness of myself. So it's weird. It's weird to think, okay, maybe I'm a writer in this way, but maybe I want to switch to be a podcaster. Maybe I want to do something different. Maybe I want to try something else. Well, but I've been a writer. Again, I'm giving a very simple example, but there's much more fraught ones. I belong on this side, not that side. I come from this sort of people, this sort of tradition, and that comes with stories about how those people hurt us, and those stories are permanent. Those stories give me meaning, and those stories give me purpose. So all those things are good. One of the things I think of is that there's a lot of power in kind of presence, and conversation is about presence. A lot of the reason people are so afraid of real-time conversation is they can't escape. You don't know what I'm going to say next. You don't know what you're going to react to. What if you regret what you say and react, but you're in the moment with each other, which is so raw and powerful, right? But the stories we tell each other, stories have a past and a present and a future, and they're not just in the moment. So we can get stuck sometimes in our stories. And those stories, we just believe, like if we talk to that person, they're just going to say this. We already know what group they come from. We already have a story. And we already have the story about how they feel about people like me. So all of that identity stuff is writing the script for us, which is crazy if we think of ourselves as free people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm an immigrant to this country, and the United States and the way the founders put in this ethic of liberty and freedom, and the way that led to sort of the most incredible free speech progress seen across the whole world in this country, like, freedom is something we really value. And so I think we always have to be aware of the tension between identity and freedom. Identity can be a trap. It can give us so much purpose and meaning, but if it starts to tell us how we should think before we get a chance to think, that's a problem. So
that's a good key there.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not about throwing out all your identities. Like, who does that? You don't do that. You just stay mindful. You stay mindful of what they're opening up and what they might incidentally be closing down.
I love the opening up, because when you're across the table from someone, you need to be, even as a lawyer, we are trained, you always, when you're in court, you always have your ear to what the prosecution, if you're a defense attorney, what the prosecution is saying, what the other side is saying. Because you can't, yes, you make your case, then you come with your docket, your folder, and you're going to say you're prepared for your argument. But life throws you curveballs. So you have to, at some point, you have to set your argument aside and listen attentively to what the other person is saying. That's that's what informs your own decisions next. Exactly. You have to listen. So if I just come and say, I think this is what they're gonna argue in court, and I'm ready, and then I say, okay, there's no need for me to listen because I'm prepared. I know what they're gonna say. You're gonna miss a lot of stuff. You're gonna lose. You're gonna look unprofessional. You're gonna look crazy. That's right. If you say, I'm ready, I think this is what they're gonna say. So I have my points. I have my stance, but I'm also listening to see what ways we connect, what ways
am I surprised? What way was I misunderstanding them?
Yeah.
Then you come out of that conversation even more hopeful.
That's so beautifully said. I love that.
Yeah.
You nailed it. That's
Thank you.
it.
Okay, so my last question before we go into our final part of this conversation is radicals. You know, people always say that is the word that is thrown around, the far right, the far left. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody in the middle, but if you listen to the internet, it's like everybody is far right and far left. There is no more middle.
Mhm.
How do we identify a true radical? And do you think how do you know, okay, this is a person that who is set in their ways, they cannot change, I cannot have a conversation with them. And do you think it's still, how do we then relate to those kinds of people?
Right. Oh, cool. I this is gonna sound so weird, but when I encounter someone who is a radical in the sense that my understanding of the word radical is that radical is really about like purity, right? So somebody who is radical in their beliefs is like it kind of all boils down to this one thing for them, and that one thing is really, really important. When I run into people like that, I smile. I'm just like, whoa. Because to me, like a radical about a certain issue has thought out that issue or that angle so much and it's so deep in them that it's like an invitation to look at it from a lens that is so committed. So committed. So committed that it likely has led to blindness in other places. But who can raise their hand and say I have never had a blind spot? We've all had a blind spot. I think radicals by definition tend to have a lot of blind spots in a lot of areas. But also like deep sort of emotional and actual like kind of knowledge about the stakes and the repercussions of something. So now I think you kind of may have asked sort of about two groups of people. Like that's sort of I think of when I think of radical, but you also asked about people who are really stuck in their ways. So
Yeah.
I've met radicals who are totally game for a conversation. I don't think that being extremist in your beliefs means that you are extremely inaccessible. I think we conflate those two because they often coexist. They do. Like one makes the other more likely. But it's another stereotype, is what I'm saying. Like there are plenty of people you would label extremist in their views who want nothing more than to have conversations. And they're really, really fun conversations. They're the most fun conversations with those people. So I'll say that because they want nothing more than to share their views. It's really cool. And I know it sounds crazy because like in some, and I apologize, I guess, for the people are probably putting, into that blank, like really cool talking about this extreme view. I'm not thinking about the view, the content. I'm just thinking about, meeting somebody who is that committed. Extreme views exist all over the place. But yeah, but the opportunity to learn is intense. People who are stuck in their ways is a whole different thing. I've met moderates who are really stuck in their ways, and I've met extremists who are really stuck in their ways. That's different. That's about like humility. That's about the belief about other people, right? Some folks get, I think, extreme in a view that other people are just worse and bad and don't know what they know, and that what they know is the best. What they know is the best. And somehow they've convinced themselves of that they're amazing and that they figured it all out. And I mean, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you run into folks like that, I don't give up. I find that a really interesting challenge. And there's many ways in for folks like that. But people who come at it with, either the certainty that either comes from a sense of superiority or sometimes comes from a sense like a deep need for self-protection. A lot of folks can't entertain other ideas because it threatens something really deep inside themselves or their own story. And they might not even know that. That's deep stuff. They might not even know. That might have gotten covered over years ago. Who knows? But something needs to hold or it'll all fall apart, they think. And so they will hold really tightly. And so what I find is that, and this is an interesting analogy, you're making me think just on the spot, but like, I think curiosity is sort of like waves crashing on rocks. Over time, the waves will soften those rocks. Over time, they will grind down the hardness over time. The water doesn't seem so weak next to the hardness of the rock, but it will happen. So to me, it's not about, I never say it's impossible, right? That it's impossible to get so curious about somebody long enough that they start to get curious about you. That's kind of the thing. More people feel attached to this sense of I've been unheard all my life, all these people are idiots, or they're evil, or they're crazy. The more attached people feel to that, the harder their rock, the more time it'll take of aiming curiosity at them, of actually being interested in them, of giving them space to be heard, of sort of disproving by demonstration that other people are crazy, stupid, or evil. Because who's going to be so warm-hearted to still listen? Is going to disprove that person's theories. And over time, they will soften. The question is more about who has that time. If that time is 100 years, I don't got that time. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to walk over here. I'm going to talk to somebody else. And that person needs to figure themselves out first.
I think so. The best deradicalization programs are programs where you expose. Right? So they're exposure programs. So why is it that in cities like London, New York City, where they have different people, you find that they're more understanding of others?
Yes.
Because they have that exposure. Exactly. So you're saying, unless I know there are some outliers, people who just, are who they are. But I'm saying in general, so these are the normal, reasonable people.
Yeah.
So if you're saying Black people are this, and you're exposed to different groups, and you're like, oh, you're just humans like me.
Yeah.
Or Muslims are this. But then I grew up in Nigeria, and let me tell you, Nigeria is almost very close Christian Muslims, right? So in my school, we would have morning prayers from morning to Thursday, Christian prayers. And on Fridays, they'd have the Muslim call to prayer, and they would, as a group, as a collective, and stop class. And if you're a Christian, you go do whatever, or if you're not interested in, and if you're a Muslim, you go with the Muslim people and you pray. And we see them pray, and it's normal to me. There's nothing there. It's a normal. In my neighborhood, we hear the call prayers out loud, and it's just like, oh, girl, my childhood friend was a Muslim, and we had so much in common, and it was not a problem, not a conversation. It was just this. She's
and
different.
You built, because of that relationship, you had built-in immunity.
Yes,
to negative stories about each other's groups, and so it's exposure, but it's exposure in kindness. It's not just like, if I'm on the left and I'm exposed to people on the right by going on social media and following all the biggest talking heads, I'm going to hear a lot of screaming. You know? Right. So it has to be kind of exposure to like the actual human conditions of those people. Right. And if we get that, then we get built-in immunity to these narratives that don't serve us, that separate us and make us believe all this stuff that is what actually gets us to hurt each other. So I love that you went through that experience. I'm afraid that fewer and fewer people are having those experiences. And so all they're left with is the signals and the intellectual arguments and the logic and the protection and the safety and the fear. That's all they're left with. Yeah. That's scary.
It's honestly incredibly sad. But I pray that we honestly get to a place where in real life, like bring back in real life, because I'm also limiting my social media. We need to limit it.
Yes, I think so.
It's not helpful. It's not. Yeah. You need to, in real life, go find those actual people, engage. Don't listen to even what politicians are saying, because they have their own agenda.
Yeah.
Go human to human. You're a human being. I mean, start a conversation. If you have to start your conversation holding hands and be like, I'm a human being, you're a human being. Like, if you have whatever you have to do to like connect, before then you go into the meat of your conversations. It's amazing.
I completely agree. You got it. That's it.
We've come to the end of our conversation, but a viewer asked a question. I like to do Ask an Expert, and they said Thanksgiving is coming up, and should they just stop not even bring up any political discussions? How they engage with these topics? Do they avoid it altogether with their family, or do they talk about it on a dinner table? What would you suggest?
I'd suggest being intentional and setting up conditions for success. Don't talk about it at the dinner table, because that means it's a group of people and it's a context of love and warmth. So it's a high risk place for something that could really like bring bad, messy dynamics. But instead, after dinner, before dinner, tap Uncle Bob on the shoulder and be like, "Hey, Uncle Bob, like, wanna go out take a walk? I got something I'm wondering about." And I know that
Yeah.
sounds silly, like you fill in your own words, make it real to you, but do the one-to-one. Do the
Yeah.
one-to-one, not a group, and do the one-to-one away from everybody else. And
Okay.
listen, do a lot of listening. And then the last thing is, instead of asking why people believe what they believe, ask how they came to believe what they believe. Leave time for the story. And if it's only 5 minutes, it's only 5 minutes. Whatever, you can continue next year. Doesn't matter. Just don't put too much pressure on any one exchange to solve all your problems. It's not going to do that. That's not how humans work.
Thank you so much for coming. Do you have any final words you want to say before we end the conversation?
I just really think that it takes a lot of courage in certain moments to stay curious when it's hard, but that is the skill in most demand right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Monica. And you can get her book do you want to say where people can find it?
Yeah, it's called I Never Thought of It That Way, How to Have Fearlessly Curious Conversations in Dangerously Divided Times. And it's everywhere. It's in your indie booksellers, it's in your Amazons. Yeah, it's on audiobook. I recorded it, and it's in print in all these ways. You can also check out A Braver Way, which is my podcast. We did 2 seasons leading up to the election with some pretty incredible conversations, getting very real about the barriers to this work. So check those out. Each episode represents a different barrier.
Oh, amazing. I'm definitely going to check it out as well. Thank you so much for coming. I really enjoyed our conversation. Everybody, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Sorry for any technical difficulties I was having, but I hopefully you were able to listen, get something from this conversation, and apply it in your actual life. And until next time, that's all for me. Thank you, guys.